Loneliness doesn't begin the day people stop calling. It begins the day you stop answering yourself. What if the emptiness you feel isn't proof that you are alone, but evidence that you've been gone for a long time? Loneliness is usually described as a social problem, but psychology reveals something far more intimate. This study is not about isolation, rejection, or lack of love from others. It is a raw dive into existential loneliness, the quiet disconnection that happens when you abandon your inner world, silence your emotional needs, and lose touch with who you really are. This is not about losing people. It is about losing yourself. The psychology of loneliness, why your loneliness isn't what you think it is. Before we continue, please like, comment and subscribe to this channel. Tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Loneliness comes in different forms, some of them confusing. The loneliness I want to talk about isn't born from a breakup. It doesn't come from exclusion. And it doesn't disappear even when people surround you. You can be in a room full of voices, laughter, and movement, and still feel like you are watching life through glass. This is the loneliness people struggle to explain. Because on the surface, nothing is wrong. You have conversations. You respond to messages. You show up. Yet inside, there is a quiet emptiness. A subtle disconnection. A feeling that something essential is missing. Psychology calls this existential loneliness, the absence of inner connection, meaning, and self-presence. It is not the pain of being alone. It is the pain of being uninhabited. Most people misunderstand loneliness because they believe it is caused by external absence. They think, if I had more friends, if I were loved differently, if someone stayed. But many people who feel the deepest loneliness are not isolated at all. They are emotionally unavailable to themselves. This loneliness begins early. As children, we depend on connection for survival. We learn who we are through how we are responded to. When a child's emotions are met with curiosity, safety, and presence, they learn. My inner world matters. But when emotions are ignored, minimized, rushed, or punished, a different lesson forms. Some parts of me are not welcome. So the child adapts. They quiet their feelings. They hide their needs. They become agreeable, strong, or invisible. Not because they want to, but because attachment demands it. This is the first moment of self-loss. Over time, the child becomes skilled at reading others but disconnected from themselves. They know how to keep peace, how to avoid conflict, how to stay needed. But they don't know how to feel at home inside their own body. And loneliness quietly settles in. Not as sadness, but as numbness. Not as tears, but as restlessness. Not as despair, but as a constant sense of something is wrong. This loneliness doesn't scream. It hums. The second form of loneliness we'll examine is emotional self-abandonment. Loneliness deepens when emotional self-abandonment becomes normal. Emotional self-abandonment happens when you consistently choose attachment over authenticity. You silence yourself to avoid conflict. You ignore your boundaries to keep connection. You dismiss your feelings so others remain comfortable. These choices often feel small in the moment, but they accumulate quietly. Each time you do this, a small rupture occurs inside. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough to create distance between you and yourself. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. You tell yourself you're being mature. You tell yourself you're being understanding. But your heart feels the loss even when your mind rationalizes it away. Psychologically, safety is not created by proximity alone. Being near someone, talking often, or maintaining constant contact does not automatically produce security. Safety is created by being able to be yourself without disappearing in the process. When you abandon your emotional truth, your body responds. Tension settles into the shoulders. Anxiety lingers in the chest. A quiet emptiness forms beneath everyday functioning. These are not flaws. They are signals. This is why some people feel lonelier in relationships than they do alone. They are connected, but not seen. Loved, but not known. Chosen, but not as themselves. So they start searching. They seek reassurance to calm the unease. They crave intensity to feel something real. They want constant communication to avoid the silence. But nothing satisfies the hunger. Because the hunger is not for people. It is for self-return. Loneliness becomes chronic when you cannot come back to yourself after interacting with others. Instead of feeling nourished, you feel drained. Instead of feeling safe, you feel anxious. Instead of feeling present, you feel like you are performing a version of yourself designed to be acceptable. Psychologically, this creates identity erosion. You lose track of what you want, what you feel, and what matters to you. You begin to define yourself by reactions rather than inner signals. Your sense of self becomes dependent on external response. And when there is no one around, the emptiness becomes unbearable. Not because you are alone, but because you don't know how to be with yourself. This is the hidden cost of emotional self-abandonment. The third form of loneliness we'll examine is the result of inner child needs that were never met. Inside every adult lives a younger self who learned what love feels like. This inner child holds emotional memory, not in language, not in logic, but in sensation. In the tightening of the chest. In the way the body braces during silence. In the unease that appears without explanation. These reactions are not random. They are remembered experiences stored beneath conscious thought. If you learned that comfort was inconsistent, calm may feel unfamiliar. Peace might trigger anxiety. You may stay alert even when nothing is wrong, because stillness once meant something was about to be taken away. Your nervous system learned to expect disruption. If you learned that love required effort, you may overgive without realizing why. You may exhaust yourself trying to be useful, understanding, or indispensable. Rest may feel undeserved. Receiving may feel uncomfortable. You learned that love was something you had to earn, not something you were allowed to receive freely. If you learned that needs were inconvenient, you may struggle to ask for help. You may downplay pain, minimize your emotions, or tell yourself others have it worse. You learned early that needing too much risked disconnection, so you learned to need quietly, or not at all. The inner child does not disappear with age. It waits. Waiting for permission to exist without performance. Waiting to be acknowledged without being corrected. Waiting to be met without being rushed. Loneliness often comes from this waiting. Not for someone new, but for someone inside to finally pay attention. Many adults respond to this pain by becoming hyper-independent. They tell themselves they don't need anyone. They pride themselves on strength, logic, and self-sufficiency. Productivity replaces emotional presence. Control replaces safety. But independence without inner connection is just another form of isolation. The inner child still longs for emotional safety. For softness instead of tension. For reassurance instead of silence. For presence without conditions. When those needs remain unmet, loneliness changes shape. It becomes numbness. Dissociation. Emotional fatigue. You may feel detached from joy, disconnected from meaning, and unmotivated without knowing why. This is not laziness. It is grief. Grief for a self that learned to survive instead of feel. Healing begins when you stop judging this loneliness. When you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What did I need that I never received?" The moment you acknowledge the inner child, loneliness begins to loosen, because being seen internally changes everything externally. Loneliness does not disappear through distraction. It fades through presence. Not the forced kind. Not productivity. Not noise. But the quiet presence that comes when you stop running from silence. When you sit still long enough to notice what you've been avoiding. When you allow yourself to feel without immediately trying to fix, explain, or justify it. Most people don't fear loneliness itself. They fear what they might hear if they slow down enough to listen. Because presence exposes truth. It reveals exhaustion you've been ignoring. Needs you've been postponing. Grief you never gave space to feel. Coming home to yourself is not dramatic. It doesn't look like a breakthrough moment or a sudden sense of peace. It is subtle. Almost easy to miss. It looks like pausing before saying yes when your body wants to say no. It looks like naming your feelings honestly, even when they don't make sense yet. It looks like respecting your limits without explaining them away or apologizing for having them. This is where psychological wholeness begins. Not in being alone. Not in being surrounded. But in being anchored. Anchored in your body, where emotions show up as sensation before language. Anchored in your emotions, instead of treating them as problems to manage. Anchored in your truth, even when that truth feels inconvenient or unfamiliar. When you reconnect with yourself in this way, relationships change naturally. Not because you try harder. But because you stop abandoning yourself to maintain connection. You stop chasing validation because you are no longer empty inside. You stop fearing abandonment because you are no longer leaving yourself first. You stop needing constant reassurance because your nervous system feels safer at home. Loneliness transforms. It becomes a signal, not an identity. A gentle alert telling you to check in rather than check out. To slow down instead of numbing. To return inward instead of reaching outward for relief. You were never lonely because you were unlovable. You were lonely because you learned to disappear to survive connection. And the moment you stop doing that, connection begins again. Not because the world suddenly changes. but because you return to your feelings, to your needs, to your presence. And that quiet return is where loneliness finally ends.